Today's video is sponsored by Cellars.
Crochet is pretty awesome, but where did it start? There's different words for crochets in other countries. French, Dutch, Swedish people all call it crochet too, while the Italians call it uncinetto. Uncinetto. I can say that word all day. But the word crochet comes from the Middle French word for hook, croche, and the Old Norse word for hook, kroger. Nowadays, crochet items are popular among people who want to create art with yarn. Crochet is created by making loops and stitches to create an elaborate three-dimensional fabric piece, but where did it come from? Its origins are murky, and in this video, we'll take a journey down a historic road to discover the possible origins of crochet. Once believed to be a historically European craft, researchers suggest other possibilities of its origin are even older, including Egypt and ancient China. No, she didn't invent crochet, and she didn't either. Old crochet pieces and proof of their past existence are hard to come by, and unfortunately, not a single piece of crochet fabric created for the 19th century has been saved. But that doesn't mean there is no evidence, because I found a lot. Crochet has a long history, with similar techniques being discovered in Israel as early as 6500 BC. Similar forms of this stitch can also be traced back to the Middle Ages, when it was used for a wide variety of purposes such as clothing and decoration, religious items, and military uniforms.
Don't forget to hit the like button. Every like goes towards my wine education. Speaking of wine education, today's video is sponsored by Cellars. Cellar matches you to wines specifically made for your taste. They find gems from vineyards all over the world with hundreds of private label wines. If you're confused about selecting wines, take a quick 7-question quiz to find your taste preference, and Cellar will deliver wines that you're guaranteed to love. And they're sent straight to your door, no driving involved. These are not wines that you'll find at grocery store. These will be new wines that you've never tried before. I received 6 delicious bottles with their matching wine education cards, which outline tasting notes, suggested pairings, best serving temperatures, and their origins. I can honestly say that they match me perfectly, and I can't wait to try their Paper Tiger, which is a smoky plum and raspberry. But my favorites are the Tetrachroma, which is a Pinot Grigio, which is very light. But my hands down absolute favorite is the Crypsis. This is like a cedar and raspberry, and as you can see, I absolutely enjoyed the bottle. Cellars is giving my followers 50% off your first 6-bottle box, so please support my channel by following a link and taking a quiz and get started today.
Let's start at the beginning with the oldest stitch. The oldest form is the slip stitch, but that's the term that we use for it today. According to interweave.com, it's known as shepherd's knitting in the British Isles and pajorning in Denmark. Pajorning. Could my Dutch friends please tell me if I pronounce that right? Because I feel like I should take off the P. But we're looking at the grandmother of all old stitching, nail binding. Nail binding is much older than crochet or knitting. The oldest known pieces date back to 6500 BC. It was found in the Nahal Hamir cave. But Nalbinding or nail binding differs from traditional crochet. The creator makes a loop with thread or yarn and pulls another loop through it. This technique uses small lengths of string. The tool used is a small hook with an eye, made from bone, wood, or animal horn. The hooks are flat with sharp points with a widened handle. Early evidence of Nalbinding was found in Tubrunvi, a Mesolithic fishing village in Denmark dating back to 4200 BC. One of the rarest and oldest surviving pieces using this technique are these Egyptian socks with divided toe, dating back to 200 to 300 AD. These are held at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. I don't want to leave out any other countries, but we know that there's evidence that slip stitching was done by hook in Scotland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Estonia, Romania, and the Balkans. The slip stitch is an obvious descendant of nail binding, yet the slip stitch is not what we think of when we think of crochet today. Modern day crochet builds on angles, patterns, and decorative designs. To achieve that, crochet had to transform. It needed bigger stitches. So, what sparked this change? Tapestry crochet, a technique for painting imagery with stitches. This color word called for the development of taller stitches. Instead of a stitch consisting of a single loop, a taller square-shaped stitch, the single crochet, was created. The square grid assisted in embroidery and design. Tapestry crochet had a broad global reach and appeal. It developed in many places where the slip stitch was done and then spread beyond those regions and further. Historians theorize that this beautiful tapestry crochet possibly developed in Arabia and spread eastwards towards Tibet and westwards to Spain, following the Arab trade routes and immigrating into other Mediterranean countries. These routes were used between the 4th century and 1453. In these areas, Ras Gadushi, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, which literally means and translates into Rushdie style crochet, was huge popular fabric at the time, but popular does not make it easier. In Iran, Rushdie is a form of traditional sewing and crocheting of Rushdie. It's one of the most beautiful, intricate works of art that's rooted in their cultural background. Some historians believe that Rushdie is the ancestor of crochet and began between 550 and 33 BC, using the craft of hook and brightly colored silks on a woven fabric. Textile exports from Iran in the 5th century were popular all over Europe, so much so that European kings and elders would have them covering their graves and historical figures. The Hermitage Museum in Russia houses an exquisite piece of fabric decorated with this crocheting work. Let's look at some pictures that closer resemble crochet. At first look, this picture resembles old-fashioned crochet chevron afghan, right? The Benaki Museum in Athens, Greece houses this rare object, which was initially mistaken for a popular crochet design. However, it does not have the same pattern as those as classic crochet. Don't be fooled, this piece of thread work came from an Egyptian tomb. It was made between 900 and 1100 AD, but it's called thread work by the creators. These stitches look exactly like double crochet stitches. But this ancient handmade piece uses advanced techniques to create this chevron pattern somehow. According to Talking Crochet, although this Egyptian sample lies mutely in a museum, it speaks to us from across generations. Most convincingly, the piece isn't a simple or crude pattern of chains or stitches alone, a technique thought to have been invented sometime in the 1600s. It's an advanced style showing a definite pattern and skilled technique. The experts know some sort of tool was required to make something like this due to uniform, intricate stitches. In my heart, I know a hook made these stitches. Examples of crochet's early cousin, Nalbinding, were also found in Northern Europe in Viking territory between 800 and 1066 AD. Also, there's early evidence dating back to indigenous tribes in South America. They can find intricate needlework that was used in girls' coming-of-age rites. Traces of crochet can also be found in Asia. One of the earliest type of crochet-esque dolls were found in China during the Shang Dynasty, dating back to the 16th century. In China, it was an early example of 3D characters made with some form of needlework. You may recognize the name. It was called amigurumi in Japan and became super popular. American crochet expert and world traveler Ann Potter says the modern art of true crochet as we know it today was developed during the 1500s. It became known as crochet lace in France and chain lace in England. In Italy, it was called nun's work or nun's lace, as nuns first started to work on it, which was called church textiles. Apparently, they were able to create crochet stitches in order to represent religious icons, crosses, and more. After developing in China, Turkey, India, Persia, North Africa, it finally reached Europe in the 1700s and referred to as tambourine, from the French word timbre for drum, which is embroidery made on a taut, stretched out fabric. According to the Crochet Guild of America, at the end of the 18th century, timbre evolved to what the French called crochet in the air, when the background fabric was discarded and a stitch was worked on its own. The earliest published crochet pattern was printed in 1823 by a Dutch magazine called Penelope. It was a pattern for a purse, but I can't find exactly where that pattern is, but if I do, I'm going to link that all down below. Forgive me for not being able to say this name, but Mademoiselle, this right here, is generally credited for the invention of Irish crochet, publishing the first book of patterns in 1846. Little did they know at the time, but Irish crochet would aid them in the potato famine. During the potato famine of 1845 through 1850, poverty-stricken men, women, and children would sell Irish crochet just to make ends meet. Teachers would even be trained and sent across Ireland just to teach this craft. There's even a reference to someone during a great Irish famine using a stiff wire inserted into a cork or tree bark. The end was filed down and bent into a little hook to produce some fine Irish crochet. And when the Irish immigrated to the Americas, they were able to take with them crocheting and share it with us. At the end of the 1800s, crochet was beginning to change. In the US, crochet lace was new and peaking between 1910 and 1920. Crochet became even more elaborate in texture and complicated stitching. Early in the 1900s, new publications arose using crochet threads, using brightly colored yarns, and elaborate beading. After World War II into the early 60s, the craft remained primarily a homemaker's art until the late 60s and the early 70s, when a new generation renewed interest in crochet, particularly in the US and the UK, with many funky designs. Granny squares became super popular around this time. You were able to find them on any pattern, from everything from clothing, bags to decor. The granny square has yet to go out of style, and I still see it on the runways and on celebrities to this day, year after year. Crochet doesn't have to be a dying craft. The history of crochet needs to be preserved so they can be carried on for generations and generations. And if you would like me to do a video on what's going on right now with crochet, drop it down in the comments. Until then, make sure you check out my video, Can Crochet Be Done by Machine? And I'll see you on the next one. Bye guys.